Hey, greetings. Michael DDA here. Thank you for joining us. Last week we covered Exodus 6 and Exodus 7. 7 was of, I think, particular interest because it talked about Moses and Aaron going in to talk to Pharaoh. Remember when they went in the first time, they walked right past their lions. Moses used his rod, and it said that the lions became as dogs, delighted to see their master come home, and walked into Pharaoh and started talking to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh was taken by surprise. His ministers weren't there. Nobody was there. They just walked in. And these lions, they're bigger than Pharaoh is. Well, the second time they went in, which was the next day, apparently, Pharaoh, and his magicians were more prepared. And so when Moses came, he was supposed to give the example of throwing his staff on the ground. And so we talked about that a little bit. And we saw that here in this chapter. It said the rod of Aaron swallowed up their rods. Well, in Yasher, and maybe it's saying the same thing here because it says every man threw down his rod and they became serpents. So in my little mind, I always thought the serpents, Moses' serpent ate the other serpent. But in Yasher, we saw that it was actually Moses' rod after it became rods again and their rods became rods again, that Moses' rod ate their rods. Well, that's a big difference in the story than a serpent eating a serpent. Well, one thing that I wanted us to point out in particular was this part right here in verse 7:3. It says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. Hear that? I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs, multiple signs, and my wonders in the land of Egypt, in Egypt's land. And Pharaoh will not heed you. So this is kind of the grid for all the plagues that are going to come on. Pharaoh will not heed you. No matter what you do, he's not going to heed you. So that I may lay my hand on Egypt and bring my I looked it up earlier today and I forgot what it is already. But it's basically saying my armies, my zavoti, my people. See the and? They put an and there. That's not an and, that's a comma. He's saying the same thing over and over 3 times. My armies are my people, are Israel's seed. We've got to understand we're not talking about 3 different things. My armies, my people, Israel's seed. Yes, Israel's seed, my people, my armies, they're going out with their women and their children and their lambs and their goats and their servants and the ger who will go with them. But they're not going to go out until they become his people. Right now, many of the people are Jacob's seed, not Israel's seed. And we need to make that distinction clear. That's why I think that Israel, Jacob's seed, they call them the children of Israel in Torah, why Goshen is going to get the plagues for the first 3. Because they're not fully on board. They need to find out who Yehovah actually is. And we're going to see a movement from Pharaoh's people following him to them telling Pharaoh, you need to let these guys go because this is getting ridiculous. And I got a hunch that even some Pharaoh's people are going to become believers. They're going to leave with us as ger when we leave Egypt. I know I would. I'm a quick learner. All right. The last thing we read about was this 7 days where the water was turned to blood. It was the first plague that fell on Egypt. So the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh's heart grew hard. So great. The Pharaoh's men, they could turn water to blood. Great. Thanks for the help, guys. Could they turn the blood back to water? No. But you know what? It doesn't really say when the water turned or when the blood turned back to water. It just says 7 days passed after Yehovah had struck the river. Well, that makes me wonder, since we're talking about time, the time period between Moses visiting Pharaoh those 2 days in a row, where he threw his rod down on the ground the second day, and the beginning of this process of these 10 plagues that are going to come on Egypt. And I say that because of what I read in Yasher. And since we've already talked about the first plague, we're getting ready to start the second plague today, the frogs. I want you to see what Yasher has to say about this. And I'm going to pick it up actually a little bit earlier. I think we went over this 2 weeks ago. This was right after they had thrown their rods on the ground, and Moses' rod, when it became a rod again, ate their rods. And we're picking it up here. It says, "Now therefore send us, that we may take our journey for 3 days into the wilderness, and there may be slaughter, and there we may slaughter to him," to Yehovah. "For from the days of our going down to Egypt, he has not taken from our hands either burnt offering, oblation, or slaughters. And if thou wilt send us, his anger will be kindled against thee. Will not send us, his anger will be kindled against thee, and he will smite Egypt, either with the plague or with the sword." Well, it's going to be by the plagues. So now it says, "And Pharaoh said to them, Tell me now his power and his might. And they said to him," so now this is them talking to Pharaoh again, "He created the heavens and the earth, the seas, their fishes. He formed the light, created the darkness, caused rain upon the earth, and watered it. He made the herbage and the grass to sprout. He created man and beast and the animals of the forest, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea. And by his mouth they live and die. Surely he created thee in thy mother's womb and put into thee the breath." I said this was the spirit of life, "and reared thee and placed thee upon a royal throne in Egypt. And he will take away thy spirit and soul from thee and return thee to the ground, the dust, whence thou wast taken." And the anger of the king was kindled at their words. And he said to them, "But who amongst all the Elohims of the nations can do this?" He says, "My river is my own. I have made it myself." Well, Anakim, remember this is Anakim, the short little guy. Less than 2 feet tall. Long beard to his toes, big fat guy. How can you even have respect for somebody that looks like that? Leading people and leading the way he is, saying he created the river himself? Well, I guess if you're Pharaoh, you don't get to argue with Pharaoh. But Yehovah is going to show him different, and turning the river to blood kind of does that, doesn't it? He drove them from him. And he ordered the labor upon Israel to be more severe than yesterday. Well, I'm going to stop there because I want to drop down now. Here's what it says in verse 80. It says, "At the end of 2 years." How does this work? Remember, Moses at 78, here I have it here, in my study notes, Moses at 78. No, at 76. I'm reading here on the right, you guys. At 76 is taken from Raoul's prison, and he marries Zipporah. He plucks the rod first, marries Zipporah, and he has 2 kids. At 78, he is speaking to Yehovah, and could it be the same year that Yehovah spoke to him that he's going to be speaking to Pharaoh as soon as he gets to Egypt? Because remember, he's going to bring Israel's seed when he's 80. And he's 80, I think, right now. That means all of these plagues are happening, boom, 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 one after another. This is a very big year for an awakening for the people of Goshen and an awakening for the people of Egypt, as these plagues are thrust upon them. Let me go back to this. I just want to read through the first plague. And at the end of 2 years, again, making this fit, it's got to fit. And Yehovah again sent Moses to Pharaoh. So now, has it been 2 years between the rod incident and this incident where he's going back to Pharaoh? It may very well be. And that means that instead of the plagues being over the course of 3 years, they're over the course of maybe less than a year. We'll see. Or maybe we won't. We'll speculate. At the end of 2 years, Yehovah again sent Moses to Pharaoh to bring forth Israel's seed and to send them out of the land of Egypt. And Moses went and came to the house of Pharaoh, and he spoke to him the words of Yehovah who had sent him. But Pharaoh would not hearken to the voice of Yehovah. And Elohim roused his might in Egypt upon Pharaoh and his subjects. And Elohim smote Pharaoh and his people with very great and sore plagues. Well, these plagues are going to come one right after the other. 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, they're just coming boom, 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 boom. Here's one. And Yehovah sent by the hand of Aaron and turned all the waters of Egypt into blood with all their streams and rivers. And when the Egyptians came to drink and draw water, he looked in. And when an Egyptian came to drink and draw water, he looked into his pitcher, and behold, the water was turned to blood. And when he came to drink from his cup, the water in the cup became blood. And when the woman kneaded her dough and cooked her victuals, their appearance was turned to that of blood. It doesn't say when it shut off. Apparently went at least 7 days. But now we're moving into the frogs. So let's pick up in Exodus chapter 8, verse 1. And we're going to see what it's got to say about these frogs. And Yehovah spoke to Moses. I'm going to put on my notes here. This on? Yes, we do. And Yehovah spoke to Moses, go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says Yehovah, let my people go that they may serve me. Now, who are they serving right now? They're serving Pharaoh. Yehovah wants them to serve him. You know what? We are a bondservant of Yehovah. We serve Yehovah. Or we should. That's what we were created to do. He says, but if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite thy territory with frogs. I'm saying thy because they're talking to Pharaoh. So the river shall, what do I have here? Just a plague, okay. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, into thy house, into thy bedroom, on thy bed, into the houses of thy servants, on thy people, into thy ovens, and unto thy kneading bowls. And the frogs shall come up on thee, and on thy people, and on all thy servants. We're going to read this next. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your rod over the streams, over the rivers, over the ponds, and cause the frogs to come up on the land of Egypt. So Pharaoh stretched out his hand over Egypt's waters. Aaron stretched out his hand over Egypt's waters, and the frogs came up and covered Egypt's land. And the magicians did so with their enchantments. What's with these crazy magicians? They're doing the same thing. All they're doing is helping Yehovah. They're not doing anything to get rid of the frogs. They're just brought up more frogs. Doesn't make sense to me. And Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat Yehovah that he take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go so that they may slaughter to Yehovah. And Moses, now see, he threw Moses out. Now he's bringing Moses back in. Remember, Moses is supposed to be as Elohim to Pharaoh. Pharaoh doesn't dare do anything to Moses. And Moses said to Pharaoh, accept the honor of saying when I shall intercede for you, for your servants and for your people, to destroy the frogs from thou and thy houses, that they may remain in the river only. What's he saying? He's saying, Pharaoh, tell me when you want me to pray. It's a sign. This is a sign. Tell me when you want me to pray, and I'll pray, and they'll go away. So Pharaoh says, tomorrow. Tomorrow? I thought he wanted to get rid of the frogs. Why didn't he say, do it right now, please? I think there's a reason why he didn't do it right now when he said tomorrow. Because Moses is in his presence right now. And if Moses prays to Yehovah in his presence and the frogs stop, that gives Moses more credibility, doesn't it, in front of his servants? So he said tomorrow. I think that's why he said tomorrow. Pride. I think it's pride. He doesn't want to be shown up. So he said tomorrow. And he said, let it be according to that word. This is Moses now speaking. Let it be according to thy words. And thou may know that there is no one like Yehovah, our Elohim, not even you, Pharaoh. That's why he wants to do it tomorrow. And the frogs shall depart from thee, from thy houses, from thy servants, from thy people. They shall remain in the river only. Then Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to Yehovah concerning the frogs which he had brought against Pharaoh. So Yehovah did according to the word of Moses. Look at that. Yehovah is doing according to the word of Moses. Did Yehovah tell Moses, give him a choice? No, that was Moses that gave Pharaoh a choice on when he should shut off the frogs. I think that's really interesting. And now, here is, Yehovah is doing according to the word of Moses, his shalach, his son. Remember, the shalach has the same authority as the one who sent him. If he buys something, it's as if the one who sent him bought it. If he says something, it's as if the one who sent him said it. And so on and so forth. And the frogs died out of the houses, out of the courtyards, out of the fields, and gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not heed to them as Yehovah had said. When did he say it? Back in 7, when he says, I'm going to do all these things to Pharaoh, and he isn't going to heed to you. That's why they sing as Yehovah had said. Now, before we go to the next plague, the dust, the lice, I want to go back to Yasher, and we're just going to go back and forth a little bit so we can see what Yasher has to say about this, because I think it just fits a little bit better for us. And Yehovah sent again and caused all the waters to bring forth frogs. Notice it doesn't say that there's been a lot of time that's gone by. All we know in Torah is it's been 7 days. Now here comes the frogs. And when the Egyptians drank, their bellies were filled with frogs. And they danced in their bellies as they danced in the river. And all the drinking water, the cooking water, turned to frogs. Also, when they lay in their beds, their perspiration bred frogs. I put, okay. Notwithstanding this, the anger of Yehovah did not turn from them. And his hand was stretched out against all the Egyptians to smite them with every heavy plague. I think these are coming boom, 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 one right after the other. So Yehovah said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out thy rod and strike the dust of the land so that it may become lice throughout the land of Egypt. He's striking the dust. The dust is what men are made out of. This is Yasher. This is the same word that's being used here in Yehovah. Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground, the Yasher of the ground. Same word exactly. And they did so. For Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and it became lice on man and beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. Now the magicians so worked with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. There were lice on man and beast. And the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of Yehovah. They're starting to see the might of Yehovah. This is just the finger. Soon the hand, finally the arm is going to come. But Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed to them, just as Yehovah had said. There it is again. We're not going to go through that note. And Yehovah said to Moses, rise early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh as he comes out to the water. Then say to him, thus says Yehovah, let my people go that he may serve me. You know what? We're getting ready to start the next one. I guess they didn't. When did the lice leave? I don't know when the lice left. Maybe it was the swarms that ate the lice. Let's go look and see what it says about the lice. Here we are. And he sent and smote their dust to lice. The lice became in Egypt to the height of 2 cubits upon the earth. Whoa, that's a lot of lice. Does that mean all the dust for 2 cubits down became lice? And now they're waiting in lice? Can you imagine how bad it would be? The lice were also very numerous in the flesh of man and beast, in all the inhabitants of Egypt, also upon the king and queen. Yehovah sent the lice, and it grieved Egypt exceedingly on account of the lice. Notwithstanding this, look at, they got the comma there this time, the anger of Yehovah did not turn away, and his hand was still outstretched over Egypt, his hand. That was the finger of Yehovah, now his hand. Of course, it did say hand up here too. Stretched out, his hand was stretched out. Okay, beasts. This is the next plague, and this is going to be the first one that is not going to affect Israel. I should say Goshen. Let's be clear, Jacob's seed. And here comes the swarms. Or else. Well, here, I'm going to read the verse just before it because it kind of goes with it. Then Yehovah said to Moses, rise early in the morning, stand before Pharaoh as he comes out to the water. Then say to him, thus says Yehovah, let my people go that they may serve me. Or else, if you will not let my people go, behold, I will send the swarms. This does say swarms, it says swarms of flies. It says the swarms is what it says. And thou and thy servants on thy servants and on the people and into thy houses. The houses of the Egyptians shall be full of the swarms, and also the ground on which they stand. This is kind of like fair warning. This is coming. And in that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms, it does say no swarms, shall be there. I was debating in my mind, why was it that the land of Goshen was plagued 3 times? I think it was because they would not listen to Moses. And now, after these first 3 plagues, they are getting the idea that they need to listen to Moses. I think that Pharaoh's people are starting to get the same idea. Let's kind of watch for this transition. I think it's interesting. And in that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms shall be there, in order that you may know that I am Yehovah. Who may know? Moses, Pharaoh may know that you are, that Yehovah, that I am Yehovah in the midst of the land. I will make a difference between my people and thy people. Tomorrow this sign shall be. I like how he gives it to him in advance. Tomorrow this sign shall be. Fair warning, Pharaoh. Just so there's no doubt on when it's going to start. And Yehovah did so. Thick swarms came into the house of Pharaoh, into his servants' houses, and into all of the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted with the swarms. They finally did it right, with the swarms. Never says flies. It just says the swarms. And Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, go slaughter to your Elohim in the land. Doesn't want to let them go out of the land. This is not going to be acceptable. And Moses said, it is not right to do so, for we would be slaughtering the abominations of the Egyptians to Yehovah our Elohim. If we slaughter the abominations of the Egyptians before their eyes, will they not stone us? You think Moses is really concerned? No, I think Moses wants to do what Yehovah told him to do. 3 days journey. We will go 3 days journey into the wilderness and slaughter to Yehovah. So it's kind of like he says, well, you can do it in the land, but Moses is coming back at him saying, no, No, we're going to do it in the wilderness. We will go 3 days journey into the wilderness to slaughter to Yehovah our Elohim as he commanded us. So Pharaoh said, I will let you go that you may slaughter to Yehovah your Elohim in the wilderness. Only you shall not go very far. Doesn't want him to go 3 days journey. I don't want you to go so far. Intercede for me. Then Moses said, indeed, I am going out from you, and I will entreat Yehovah that the swarms may depart tomorrow from Pharaoh, from his servants, from his people. But let Pharaoh not deal deceitfully anymore in not letting the people go to slaughter to Yehovah. So Moses went out from Pharaoh and entreated Yehovah. This is going to be the next day. And Yehovah did according to the word of Moses. Again, Yehovah is doing according to the word of Moses. Yehovah told him to get it started. Moses is again saying when it's going to stop. He removed the swarms from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart at this time also. Neither would he let the people go. Let's go back to Yasher and read about the same thing. And Yehovah sent all kinds of beasts of the field into Egypt. And they came and destroyed all Egypt, man and beast and trees, and all things that were in Egypt, everything that was in Egypt. And Yehovah sent fiery serpents, scorpions, mice, weasels, toads, together with others creeping in the dust. These are the ones that are crawling around on their feet. Now he's going to send the flying insects, flies, hornets, fleas, bugs, gnats, each swarm according to its kind, and all the reptiles and winged animals according to their kind came to Egypt and grieved the Egyptians exceedingly. And the fleas and the flies came into the eyes and ears of the Egyptians, and the hornets came upon them and drove them away, and they removed from it into their inner rooms, and it pursued them. And when the Egyptians hid themselves on account of the swarms of animals, they locked their doors after them, and Elohim ordered, look at this, I don't even know what this is, Sulanot, which was in the sea, to come up and go into Egypt. She had long arms. Is this kind of like an octopus? What is this? 10 cubits in length, of the cubits of a man. 10 cubits. 18 feet. 18 feet long. And she went upon the roofs and uncovered the rafterings and floorings and cut them and stretched forth her arms into the houses and removed the locks and the bolts and opened the houses of Egypt. Afterwards came the swarms of animals into the houses of Egypt, and the swarms of animals destroyed the Egyptians, and it grieved them exceedingly. Notwithstanding this, the anger of Yehovah did not turn away from the Egyptians, and his hand was yet stretched out against them. Here's the 5th plague. 5th through the 7th, it says. Then Yehovah said to Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him, thus says Yehovah, Elohi ha-Ivrim, Elohim of the Hebrews, says, let my people on me. Let my people go that they may serve me. This word serve is strictly for males. He's talking about men serving him. This is not about ladies serving him. This is about men serving him. The Aved, or Evadim in this case. The Evadim. No. Yeah, it's Evadim. It's my Evadim. It's my servants. For if you refuse to let them go, I will still hold them. For if you refuse to let them go and still hold them, behold, the hand of Yehovah will be upon your cattle. So we had the finger of Yehovah. So now here's the hand of Yehovah speaking for Yehovah. This is Yehovah talking to Moses. Behold, the hand of Yehovah will be on your cattle in the field, on the houses, on the donkeys, on the horses, on the donkeys, on the camels, on the oxen, on the sheep. Sheep is always going to be goats and sheep. What's the Hebrew word for that? They always have one word in particular. I'm drawing a blank right now. So that we understand. Beyond sheep and goats, a very severe pestilence. And Yehovah will make a difference between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt. So nothing shall die. This is the 5th plague. What was the 4th plague? That one didn't fall on Egypt either. The swarms. Okay. I'm sure they didn't mind missing out on that. And Yehovah will make a difference between Israel's livestock and Egypt's livestock. So nothing shall die of all that belongs to Israel's seed. And Yehovah appointed a set time. This is a moed. You know, I want you to see that things that are happening are planned. Yehovah says he's going to do something, he does it. Moses says he's going to do something, he does it. They're going to have a moed, and Yehovah appointed a moed, a set time. Tomorrow this thing in tomorrow. Yehovah will do this thing in the land. So again, he's telling them ahead of time, plan for it or don't. But I think this gives so much more credibility to what's happening for Pharaoh and for his people when they get a heads up, knowing when it's going to come on and when it's going to go off, don't you think? So Yehovah did this thing on the next day. All the livestock of Egypt died, but the livestock of Israel's seed, not one died. Then Pharaoh sent, and indeed, not even one of the livestock of the Israelites was dead. But the heart of Pharaoh became hard, and he did not let the people go. Well, Yasher has a little bit more to say about this. This says they lost all the animals of Egypt. All the livestock of Egypt died. Is that the case? We're going to see that there's going to be livestock that is going to die later on with the hail. Where did they come from if the livestock died? So we have to ask ourselves these questions. Here it is. And Elohim sent pestilence, and the pestilence pervaded Egypt in the horses and asses, in the camels, in the herds of oxen, and zaon. That's what the word was, zaon. It's sheep and goats, and in man. And when the Egyptians rose up early in the morning to take their cattle to pasture, they found all their cattle dead. And there remained of the cattle of Egypt only 1 in 10. So now we know that all of them didn't die. And of the cattle belonging to Israel in Goshen, not 1 died. That was the end of that one. Let's move on. This is going a lot faster than I planned on, you guys. So Yehovah said to Moses and Aaron, take for yourselves a handful of ashes from the furnace and let Moses scatter it towards the heavens in the sight of Pharaoh. He's doing it in Pharaoh's sight so that Pharaoh knows this is coming from Yehovah. There's no doubt. He's scattering into the heavens the shamayim, or shamim. What is it? Shamim. Shamim, shamayim. Shamayim is where the birds fly in Genesis 1. The birds fly in the heavens. He's throwing it up into the air is what we're talking about. Let Moses scatter it towards the heavens in the sight of Pharaoh. And it will become fine dust in all the land of Egypt. And it will cause boils to break out in sores on the men and the beasts throughout all the land of Egypt. Why do they leave out the definite article? You know what? It would be interesting to know if it went on the women of Egypt as well. Could it possibly have just fallen on the men, since it says the men? The man. This is the word they use. Ha'adam. Ha'adam. Same word that we use with the creation incident when we talked about Yehovah created the man, Ha'adam, from the dust of the earth. And the behemoth. Behemoth. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils. Oh, now they're having trouble. For the boils were on the magicians and all the Egyptians. But Yehovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not heed them, just as Yehovah had spoken to Moses. Over and over, we're seeing the same thing, that he's going to do these things over and over again. You know, what was shall be again. What has been done shall be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Is there going to be a second Exodus from the earth for those men who have become Israel's seed at some future Passover? I wonder. Is it going to be this Passover? I don't think so. But I think there's a Passover coming where people are going to get a heads up. And those that rule are going to make it so that Israel's seed gets to go to their own land. Are we going to go back to Israel? I wonder. I hate to even call it Israel. Are we going to go back to our land? You know, we're in Israel. Israel's not a place, it's a people. Right now, most people think Israel's a place. We've got lots to learn. Then Yehovah said to Moses, rise up early in the morning. Did I skip one? Yehovah, not spoken about. Then Yehovah said to Moses, rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh and say to him, thus says Yehovah, the Hebrew Elohim, Ha-Ivri, I forget what it is. Let my people go that they may serve me. Again, my people serving me, men serving Yehovah. For at this time, I will send all my plagues to thy heart and to thy servants and on and on thy servants and on thy people, that thou may know that there is none like me in all the earth. This is again setting Yehovah up to be the Elohim of Elohims. Now, if I will stretch out my hand, and that's so weird. Now, if I had stretched out my hand and struck you, thou and thy people with pestilence, then thou would have been cut off from the earth. He doesn't want to kill them. He wants to wake them up. But indeed, for this purpose, I have raised you, Pharaoh. Remember, he's talking to Anakim. I have raised you up, that I may show my power in thee, and that my name may be declared in all the earth. What's his name? Yehovah is his name. This is Joel. And it came to pass that whoever shall call on the name of Yehovah, shall be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be deliverance, as Yehovah has said among the remnants whom Yehovah calls. As of yet, thou exaltest thyself against my people, that thou wilt not let them go. Behold, tomorrow at this time, I will cause a very heavy hail to rain down. Well, before we go there, let's talk about the livestock that we just, oh no, this is the boils that we just had. Or did we? Yeah, this is the boils. Okay, let's talk about the boils. Going back here. And Elohim sent burning inflammation in the flesh of the Egyptians, which burst their skin, and it became a severe itch in all the Egyptians, from the soles of their feet to the crowns of their head. And many boils were in their flesh, and their flesh wasted away until they became rotten and putrid. Notwithstanding this, the anger of Yehovah did not turn away, and his hand was still outstretched over Egypt. All right. Behold, again, giving them advance notice. Behold, tomorrow, about this time, I will cause a heavy hail to rain down, such as has not been in Egypt since it was founded until now. Here comes the hail. Therefore send now and gather your livestock, thy livestock, and all that thou hast in the field, for the hail will come down on every man, every animal, which is found in the field and is not brought home, and they shall die. Heads up, everybody. All you got to do is listen to Yehovah and bring in your servants and bring in your livestock. There's still livestock. 1/10 of the livestock is still there. It says, he that feared the word of Yehovah among Pharaoh's servants made his servants and his livestock flee to the houses. But he who had no regard for the word of Yehovah, Yehovah's words, left his servants and his livestock in the field. Then Yehovah said to Moses, stretch out your hand toward the heavens, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, on man, on beast, and on every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched out his rod towards heaven, and Yehovah sent thunder and hail, and fire darted to the ground, and Yehovah rained hail on the land of Egypt. Look at this. I want to pull this up. This is hail. This is a hail that landed in Oklahoma on June of 2016. That's big hail. Can you imagine that falling on animals and trees and men? Probably it was bigger than that even. And of course, you had to deal with the fire that was coming also. And the hail struck. Actually, we're here. So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail. So very heavy that there was none like it in the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And the hail struck throughout the whole land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail struck every herb of the field and broke every tree of the field. So their fruit trees are going now. Only in the land of Goshen, where Israel's seed were, there was no hail. And Pharaoh sent and called for Moses. And Aaron said to them, I have sinned this time. No, yeah, Pharaoh said this, I have sinned this time. Yehovah is righteous, and my people are wicked. My people and I are wicked. He's acknowledging that Yehovah is righteous. Is it going to make any changes in him? Entreat Yehovah that there may be no more mighty thundering and hail, for it is enough. I will let you go, and you may stay, and you shall stay no longer. So Moses said to him, as soon as I have gone out of the city, I will spread out my hands to Yehovah. So again, advanced warning, I will spread out my hands to Yehovah, and the thunder will cease, and there will be no more hail. That thou may know, it's why we're doing it, that you may know the earth is Yehovah's. Does it say the earth? I don't know that it does or not. I would like to know. You don't need to take your time. The earth is Yehovah's. I bet it does say the earth. I gotta look. Let's just see what it says. Does it say haaretz? Yeah, it does. Haaretz. Haaretz. The earth is Yehovah's. Definite articles, they're important. That's why when I'm reading, I often leave out the definite articles because they're not there. So here's the hail from Yasher. And Yehovah sent a very heavy hail, which smote their vines, broke their fruit trees, dried them up that they fell upon them. What does that even mean? Also, every green herb became dry and perished, for the mingling of the fire descended amidst the hail. Therefore, the hail and the fire consumed all things. Also, men and beasts that were found abroad perished of the flames and of fire and the hail. And all the young lions were exhausted. Okay, what does that mean? Let's go back. Oh, we're not going to do the locust today. This is going to be the last one that we're doing here. Let's go back to the Bible. So Moses said to him, as soon as I have gone out of the city, I will spread out my hands to Yehovah, and the thunder will cease. and there will be no more hail, that you may know that the earth is Yehovah's. But as for you and your servants, thou and thy servants, I know that you will not fear Yehovah thy Elohim. Now here, look what it says. Now the flax and the barley were struck, for the barley was in the head, and the flax was in the bud. Oh, this is very interesting. Remember, we're talking about this happening one right after the other. And now we're finding out that the barley is in the head. The barley, and the word that they're using here for head, is this word aviv. The barley was in the aviv. The aviv is what we look for to start the new year. The aviv is where we're going to get the month of the aviv, is the instructions that we're going to get in Exodus 12 on how to keep the Passover. Let me read you a few verses. This is 31, 32. I guess the barley was struck. I guess I don't need to read this. This month, new moon shall be a beginning of months. It is the first month of the year to you. On this day, you are going out in the month of the Aviv. They're going out in the month of the Aviv. The barley was struck in its head in the Aviv. The feast of Yehovah, the feast of unleavened bread, you shall keep 7 days. You shall not eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you in the appointed time in the month of Aviv. It always says Ha-Aviv, the Aviv. For in the month of the Aviv, you came out from Egypt. This was Glenn McWilliams' comment. I don't think I want to read it. Yeah. Let's move on. But the wheat and the spelt were not struck, for they are late crops. You know, look at this. As we go through these plagues, we're seeing Israel being decimated. Before it's all done, we're going to see the crops are gone, except maybe for the wheat and the spelt was not struck, for it was a late crop. It didn't get so they may have that come up, but their animals are gone. Their fruit trees are gone. The barley is gone. The barley is what they would feed their cattle, but their cattle are gone too. How many cattle died because they didn't bring them in? They had 1 in 10. What percentage of the 1 that was left of the 1 in 10, the 10%, how many were they down to now? 5%? 4%? 3% of what they had? Now that then soon the firstborn is going to be taken from them. What's the next plague? I don't want to change it just yet. And when they come after us, we're going to see all the men, young and old, Pharaoh forced to chase us into the Red Sea. Oh, and we're leaving with all their gold and silver. What does Egypt even have by the time Yehovah is through with them? Because they would not let his people go. So Moses went out from the city, from Pharaoh, and spread out his hands to Yehovah. Then the thunder and the hail ceased. Yeah, Pharaoh saw it. He did it. Darn it. He's right. For the rain was not poured on the earth, and the rain was not poured on the earth. And when Pharaoh saw that the rain, the hail, and the thunder had ceased, he sinned yet more. And he hardened his heart, and he and his servants. So the heart of Pharaoh was hard, neither would he let Israel's seed go, as Yehovah had spoken to Moses. Well, I want to stop here. I was probably a little bit early. It's an hour exactly. I'm breaking it up in such a way. I want to make chapters 10 and 11 and a little bit in Yasher be to their own, because I want to talk about Passover. Isn't that interesting, the timing of this? We're coming up on Passover right now. I want to make the instructions on Passover, Exodus 12, kind of to themselves, to spend the whole week on that. I'd almost like to spend 2 weeks on it, but I'll spend a week on it probably. It's important stuff. There's a reason Passover is the first feast of Yehovah. It's because Passover is when a man who has separated himself from the kingdom of his birth and become a ger, circumcises himself and becomes Israel. And it's Israel who keeps the feasts of Yehovah. Does keeping your feasts of Yehovah make you Israel? No. Circumcising yourself, men, and joining yourself to Yehovah's people, that's what makes you Israel. That's what makes you an Ezra man. And here we are, the month of March. I think that April this year is going to be the month of the Aviv. I don't think the Aviv is going to be fully ready in March. They're doing our Aviv search right now. I think it's too early, but it will be ready in March, guaranteed. And we're going to be talking about the Passover just prior to that. You could be ready. You could be ready this year. Things are happening in the world right now. Probably it's going to be more easy to leave the kingdom of your birth this year than it has been in the last 150 years. We'll see what happens. There's big things going on in the world right now. Well, thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time. Bye now.